The movie opens with a scene of a man injecting a green liquid into an egg yolk, causing it to double instantly. The scene then shifts to a group of people who are building a star named Elizabeth Sparkle. Elizabeth is a stunning model and the host of a popular show. In her prime, crowds would flock to see her, taking selfies with the star. But over time, the public's interest waned, and the star was left neglected and broken, symbolizing the decline in Elizabeth Sparkle's popularity. The story then cuts to Elizabeth in her 50s. Despite her age, she continues to host the same show. After filming one day, Elizabeth heads to the washroom but finds the ladies' room closed. She ends up in the men's room, where she overhears the show's director on a phone call. The director remarks that Elizabeth is no longer the star she used to be. He laments how her presence, once a guarantee of high ratings, now results in declining viewership. He confides that he needs to replace her with a new, younger, and more attractive host for the show. These words shatter Elizabeth. The beauty she once took pride in is now a thing of the past. She stares at her reflection in the mirror, noticing the wrinkles that have replaced her youthful glow. She was heartbroken, not just because she was aging, but now also because she was being pushed out of the show. Desperate to hold on to her career, she decided to meet with the director. However, he was blunt with her. "Look, Elizabeth, there's nothing I can do. My show depends on giving the audience what they want." His words made it clear there was no place for her in the show anymore. The director's rejection left Elizabeth devastated. She left the hotel in a daze, his words still echoing in her mind as she drove away. When she saw her photos being taken down from a billboard, the sight distracted her, causing her to lose focus on the steering wheel. In that moment of distraction, she collided with an oncoming car. Miraculously, despite the severity of the crash, Elizabeth emerged without a scratch. Luck seemed to be on her side, and she was discharged from the hospital the same day. In the hospital, a nurse briefly examined her back and then handed her clothes. As Elizabeth dressed to leave, she noticed a small note tucked inside her coat pocket. The note contained a cryptic message: "It changed my life," and along with it, a mysterious drive labeled "The Substance." Intrigued and confused, Elizabeth rushed home and immediately played the drive. On it, she discovered detailed information about a fluid known as the substance. This mysterious substance held incredible, almost magical properties. It had the ability to create a new, younger version of any person who used it. Along with this substance, there was a second fluid designed to link the two versions, the older and the newer bodies, keeping them connected. But the process was not straightforward. For the person using the substance, both versions of their body needed to be activated every 7 days. To maintain the stability of the younger body, it required an injection of a special fluid extracted from the old body's spine. When one version of the body was active, the other would remain unconscious. At first, Elizabeth dismissed this as nonsense and threw the flash drive into the trash, convinced it was a scam. But later that night, she found herself overwhelmed by feelings of loss and desperation. She started obsessing over photos of her youthful days, longing for the past. In a moment of weakness, she reached out and messaged the contact number from the drive, saying she wanted to order the substance. The person on the other end responded curtly, asking only for her address and then providing her with a location. The following morning, while reading the newspaper, Elizabeth noticed an ad placed by her own company, a call for interviews to find a new model to replace her. It deepened her sorrow even further. Along with the newspaper, she found a black envelope. Inside, it contained a card. Elizabeth followed the instructions and arrived at the secret location, a hidden room inside an old house. Using that card, she gained access to a locked chamber, where she retrieved a box. Bringing the box home, she immediately opened it, revealing its contents: a serum, an injection that had to be used only once, and a stabilizer kit designed to maintain the new body. From the flash drive, she already knew that the stabilizing fluid would need to be drawn from the spine of her older self. The box also contained instructions for the intricate procedure of switching between the two bodies, along with a special diet tailored for both the young and old versions. Elizabeth then went to the washroom, staring at herself in the mirror. She was caught in a battle between fear and desire, struggling to decide whether she should go with this or not. After a long pause, she finally gathered the courage and injected the green fluid into her arm. At first, nothing happened, and she almost believed it had all been a lie. But soon, heavy pain surged through her body, making her vision blur as her eyes seemed to burn with intensity. The transformation had begun, and there was no turning back. Elizabeth's transformation took a shocking turn as her eyes began to swell, her eyeballs doubling in size. Then, in a gruesome twist, her back split open, and from within emerged a new, younger version of herself, a perfect, youthful body stepping out of the older one. This was Elizabeth's new self, vibrant and full of life. The young Elizabeth stared at her reflection in the mirror, barely able to believe what she was seeing. She had become even more beautiful than she had imagined, her youth restored beyond her wildest dreams. After marveling at her new appearance, she set about tending to her old body, which remained unconscious. She carefully stitched up the wound on the back of her older version, sealing it as best she could. Then, she connected a nutrient bag to the old body, ensuring it would stay alive. That night, Elizabeth reveled in her newfound youth, enjoying every moment of her transformation. But the next morning brought a jarring reminder of the process she had begun. She woke up to find her nose bleeding, a disturbing sign that all was not well. Panic set in as she remembered the instructions she'd been given along with the activation kit. To keep her new body stable, she needed to extract the special substance from her old body's spine and inject it into herself. Without wasting any time, she carefully took the substance from the back of her old self and injected it into her young body. Almost instantly, the bleeding stopped, and she felt her strength return. Elizabeth marveled at the sight of her youthful face once again, more radiant than ever. Fueled by her renewed beauty and determination, she got ready, full of confidence, and headed back to the very place where she had once been dismissed. She was determined to reclaim her place in the spotlight, starting with the audition for the same show that had cast her aside. Everyone was captivated by Elizabeth's striking beauty, and the director wasted no time in selecting her. However, Elizabeth introduced herself as Sue during the interview. After being chosen for the role, Sue remembered the crucial detail: she needed to change her body every week. To cover for this, she came up with an excuse. She told the director that her mother was ill, requiring her to visit her village each week to care for her. The director, without much thought, agreed to her request for a weekly leave, allowing her to maintain the secret of her body-switching routine. Finally, Sue had landed the job she had been hoping for, and she was thoroughly enjoying it. With her new body, she gained a captivating appearance, and by flaunting it, she quickly amassed a large following. Soon, she saw herself on billboards, and her ads were plastered all over the city. 6 days had passed since she entered this new body, and today marked the 7th. Time to switch back to her original form. Now, Elizabeth's old body would be active for a week. After the shift, Elizabeth reconnected with her original body. She then headed to her job, her television show. At the office, the director handed her a parting gift in place of her paycheck, showering her with harsh words before kicking her out. Elizabeth returned home feeling hurt and dejected. The next morning, while reading the newspaper, Elizabeth discovered an envelope from the same company where she had obtained the substance for body switching. Inside was a message that her new refill kit had arrived. Elizabeth put on her business attire and went to pick up the kit. 7 days later, Elizabeth transformed back into Sue, activating her new body. Sue intended to enjoy everything life had to offer with this new identity, but she knew that being out and about frequently could risk revealing her secret. To protect her truth, she decided to create a hidden space in her home, breaking down a wall to conceal Elizabeth's old body. Her activities were noisy, drawing the attention of her neighbors. When a neighbor came by to complain about the noise, he was taken aback upon seeing Sue. Instead of voicing his concerns, he found himself offering assistance, saying politely, "If you need any help, feel free to reach out. I live nearby." But Sue had no intention of needing anyone's help, as she was on a secret mission. She coldly shut the door in the neighbor's face and then spent hours finishing her task, building a secret room to hide Elizabeth's old body. With Sue now living in Elizabeth's place and on the verge of fame, she carefully concealed all of Elizabeth's old photos to maintain her cover. Sue was so absorbed in the thrill of her new life that she forgot about the body-switching schedule. Meanwhile, Elizabeth's original body, hidden away, was running out of food. Today was the day Sue needed to shift back into Elizabeth's body. She even brought a friend home, but while she was preoccupied with her work, she suddenly felt blood trickling from her nose and a strange sensation coursing through her body. Sue realized it was time for the body shift, but greed overtook her. Instead of following the scheduled shift, she decided to remain in her new, more appealing form for a little longer. Determined to extend her time, she took out the substances from Elizabeth's original body and injected them into herself. This temporarily cured the strange sensations she was feeling. However, the consequences for Elizabeth's body would become clear later. Sue continued in the new body for another 7 days before finally shifting back. When she returned to Elizabeth's form, she was horrified to find that one of her fingers had melted away, a direct result of her carelessness in missing the scheduled shift. Panicking, Elizabeth immediately called the company that had provided the body-switching substance. She confessed that she had missed her cycle and failed to shift back in time, which had caused damage to her body. Desperate, she asked if there was any solution to fix her melted finger, but the company's response was grim. There was no solution. "Whatever has happened cannot be undone," they informed her, leaving Elizabeth terrified. They explained that she and the new body were not separate, they were interconnected, with the new body being an extension of her own. This made it clear that she had to adhere strictly to the shift schedule. With no other choice, Elizabeth set out to obtain her new refill kit, hoping to prevent any further damage. After picking up her refill kit, Elizabeth decided to stop by a restaurant. There, she encountered an old man who spoke to her in a cryptic manner. Elizabeth noticed a peculiar mark on his hand, the same one she had seen on a nurse's hand during her hospital visit. She suddenly realized, this old man was a version of that very nurse, but much older. The old man leaned closer and asked her, "Has your new body started eating you yet?" The question sent a chill down her spine, and she bolted out of the restaurant in fear. Rattled, Elizabeth hurried back to her home. Despite the unsettling encounter, she still longed to find some joy in her old self. Determined to lift her spirits, she invited a friend over and spent time getting ready, dressing beautifully and applying makeup to resemble her vibrant new version. However, just as she was about to step outside, she noticed Sue's posters lying at her doorstep. Seeing them shattered her confidence. In a moment of self-doubt, she smeared her makeup, messed up her hair, and spiraled into distress. Overwhelmed with emotion, she binged on food to cope with her anxiety before collapsing into sleep. In a dream, Elizabeth envisioned herself already switched into her new body, performing at her show. She danced and entertained, feeling like she was back in the spotlight. But suddenly, she felt a strange bump on her lower abdomen. Panicked, she rushed to the washroom and began inspecting her belly button, only to discover something bizarre: a small chicken, a remnant of the meal she had eaten in her distress. Terrified by the absurdity of the situation, she suddenly jolted awake, realizing it had all been a nightmare. Morning had arrived, and it was actually time for her to switch back into her new body and head to the show. But when she arrived on set, she found everyone packing up the equipment. Confused and alarmed, she asked them what was going on, only to hear that the show was being cancelled. Her anxiety surged, and she rushed to the director, desperate for answers. To her surprise, the director turned her fears into joy. He explained, "You won't be doing this ordinary show anymore. We have bigger plans for you." Elizabeth, relieved and excited, felt a glimmer of hope, wondering what new opportunities awaited her. Elizabeth's opportunity to host the New Year's Eve event seemed like a dream come true, and she accepted the role without hesitation. But there was a catch. New Year's Eve coincided with the day she was supposed to shift back into Elizabeth's body. Ignoring the consequences, Sue decided to stay longer in her new body. To maintain her appearance, she took the stabilizer serum from Elizabeth's original body and injected it into her current one, preserving her youthful look. However, this choice took a toll on Elizabeth's body. When Sue finally switched back, she found that Elizabeth's body had aged significantly, looking frail and much older than before. The repeated extraction of the serum had drained the life out of it. Seeing her condition, Elizabeth's anger towards Sue turned into hatred. In a fit of rage, she tore down all the photos of Sue in her house and even covered the mirrors that reflected Sue's billboards outside. Frustrated and desperate, Elizabeth called the company once again, pleading for a way to reverse the damage and regain her old vitality. But the response was the same as before: "What's done is done. There's no going back." They did offer her one option. She could halt the process, embrace her old version permanently, and live out her life in that form. Elizabeth refused to accept this fate. Soon after, she received a call from the show, prompting her to switch bodies again. Upon returning to her youthful form, she greedily extracted a 3-month supply of serum from Elizabeth's old body, using it to enjoy life in Sue's body to the fullest. As the New Year's Eve event approached, disaster struck. The night before the event, the serum supply in her body ran dry, causing her organs to feel like they were tearing apart. Panic set in as she realized the consequences of her reckless actions. Rushing to extract more serum from Elizabeth's body, she was horrified to find that no more could be drawn out. Desperate, she called the company, and they confirmed her worst fears. She had depleted the serum completely, and she would have to wait for a new batch to be produced. Until then, she had to revert back to Elizabeth's body. The company's response sent her into a frantic state. In her desperation, she switched back to Elizabeth's deteriorating form. The transformation was violent, with her body weakening and aging even more. Her boyfriend, who had been in the house, overheard the strange sounds and, suspecting something was wrong, approached the bathroom to investigate. Elizabeth, now a withered and bald version of herself, locked the door before he could see her horrifying state. Horrified by her own appearance and unable to face the reality, Elizabeth sought a final solution. She contacted the company once more and demanded the termination fluid, hoping to end the entire ordeal. The company complied, and Elizabeth soon found herself holding the vial of the termination substance, ready to inject it into Sue's body and end the cycle. But just before she administered the injection, she recalled the company manager's warning: "If you inject the termination serum while in a body, that body will remain as it is forever." The realization hit her, and she hesitated. She gazed at her reflection in the mirror, torn between the desire to reclaim her life and the fear of being trapped forever in her weakened state. The choice she faced now would determine her fate. Overwhelmed with anger towards Sue, Elizabeth blamed her for everything that had gone wrong. Fueled by resentment, she injected the termination serum into Sue, but only half of it. Elizabeth couldn't forget that she was set to host a major show and receive an award in the coming days, recognition she desperately craved. She yearned for the admiration she once enjoyed, so she held back the remaining serum, hoping to keep her opportunity alive. Elizabeth then attempted to revive Sue, shaking her repeatedly. But when Sue remained unresponsive, Elizabeth tried to switch bodies instead. When this failed, she resorted to using the activator from her spine on Sue, which successfully awakened her. Now both Elizabeth and Sue, each a version of the same being, were active simultaneously. When Sue realized Elizabeth's intent to terminate her, rage took over. In a frenzy, she attacked Elizabeth, hitting her repeatedly until Elizabeth's head struck a fatal blow, ending her life. The gravity of her actions hit Sue immediately, realizing that the very substance she needed for survival was now out of reach. Nevertheless, she cleaned up the evidence and left for the New Year's event. As Sue arrived, the crowd greeted her with excitement, lifting her spirits momentarily. But soon, an unsettling sensation crept over her. Blood began to trickle from her nose, and panic set in. Rushing to the washroom, she watched in horror as her teeth began to crumble, falling out one by one. It dawned on her that her body was collapsing, hollowed out by the death of the real Elizabeth. Desperate to survive, Sue rushed home in hopes of using the activation serum. But on the way, she experienced further disintegration, her nails and even an ear detached. Fighting to maintain composure in the presence of others, she acted as if nothing was wrong until she reached home. There, she applied the activation serum, but it had no effect. Remembering a pair of emergency substances, Sue acted out of sheer desperation and injected them into herself. Agonizing pain coursed through her, and her body contorted as a grotesque transformation began. Her form split apart, revealing a terrifying fusion of herself and Elizabeth, a monstrous hybrid. Her mind was on the edge, struggling to understand her new reality. Unsure if she could face the world, she created a mask of her old self to hide her twisted features. Holding on to a sense of normalcy, she went to the show. But when she stood before the microphone, the mask slipped, revealing her terrifying appearance to the audience. The sight of Sue's twisted monster-like face terrified the crowd. People ran away, screaming and calling her a monster. In the chaos, a man hit her face with a baseball bat, causing pieces to fly everywhere. Blood dripped from her body, soaking the studio floor. As the crowd left, the studio fell silent. Sue's broken body fell apart even more, turning into a wriggling worm-like mass. In the center of the stage was a star-shaped stain, faintly glowing with the last traces of Elizabeth's presence, marking where she used to stand. Sue's ruined form curled around the star, her face twisted into a final creepy smile aimed at the sky. And then, as if mocking her futile struggle, the grotesque smile shattered, leaving behind nothing but a pool of blood. By the next morning, the studio staff arrived, and swiftly cleaned up the horrifying remnants, erasing all traces of the tragedy that had unfolded there. And with that, the story came to an end, a haunting reminder of the perilous consequences of defying nature and the destructive force of unchecked ambition.